Hey y'all, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Tiffany Garuba and you're here with my podcast, Sit Down Sundays, where we talk about mental health, lifestyle, and growing into our best selves together. I'm kind of like your twin sis on this podcast. I say that I'm more like your twin sis than your older sis because your older sis gives you advice that she already has, and I'm going to be right here on this journey with you. So if that's something that interests you, make sure you stick around. Today we're going to be talking about some shadow work questions that we can work through together that will help us get us from our current selves all the way to our highest self. Now, I'm not saying that these questions are the end all answer, but they're definitely going to get to the root of a lot of things that you're going to need to work through before you get to that highest self. So let's just get into these questions. Now, I want to preface this by saying you need to be extremely honest with yourself with these questions. Otherwise, it's genuinely just not going to work. So get a journal, get your notes app open, whatever you need to do, wherever it is that you want to take these notes, that you want to write these questions down and answers to, make sure you do that. You don't have to show anybody, which is the great part of this whole entire thing, so you can be as honest with yourself as you need to be. So just get that little area set up and let's go ahead and get started. Now, a lot of these questions might not take just one simple answer. You might have to come back to it, which is what I've had to do with a lot of these questions because they're really hard hitting, and some of them, you need a little time to get down a little deeper, to write a little bit more stuff, to think and process everything that you're actually writing down, because some of the stuff that you will be writing down or even saying out loud, however you're choosing to answer these questions, are going to be things that you didn't even think would be brought up. The first question I actually got from a card game. I think the card game is called We're Not Really Strangers. I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. I think you can get it at Target. But I had to answer this question in front of a lot of people. It was something that I hadn't even asked myself, so it was very interesting to have to answer this in front of some strangers. They weren't even really strangers, they were my friends, but to answer this in front of people was very hard because I didn't even really have the answer myself, and I think about that question all the time now. And the question is, what is something that you are lying to yourself about? Now, when I got this question in the card deck, I didn't lie. When I answered the question to all my friends, to all the people that I was with, I definitely didn't lie, but it wasn't as deep as I could have gone. I went home from there and I started thinking about the question even more. And I was like, what am I really lying to myself about? Genuinely. Like, what in my life am I saying that I'm doing enough of that I'm actually not? What in my life am I truly lying to myself about? And that really changed a lot of things. And I was like, ooh. Because one, we are our biggest critiques, but I also am my biggest fan. So telling myself what I was lying to myself about was actually super hard for me because I hadn't thought of something from that perspective before of what am I lying to myself about? Not what am I lying to other people about, but genuinely what am I lying to myself about? But I think that question alone is such a good start and a good step to figuring out what you need to do to get to your highest self. Because if you figure out what you're lying to yourself about, you can no longer lie to yourself. You can either continue lying to yourself, continue being the same way you are, or figure out a way to change it and not lie to yourself anymore. The second question is just write down something you're jealous of. Write down everything you're jealous of if you want to write down everything you're jealous of. But write down something you're jealous of. And this goes along with the third question. When you compare yourself to others, what is the root of that comparison? So what I want you to do with those two questions is, one, write down what you're jealous of. And then the second thing is write down everyone that you're close to that you can think of in your life. Anyone that pops in your mind, write them down. And then think about what you don't like within that person. Write down one word that describes what you don't like about them. And this can also play within the jealousy question, which is why I put them in together. But think about one word that describes that person that you don't like and go through that list of words that you describe those people with and see if there's any commonalities. Once you see if there's any commonalities, notice if some of those things are pain and beliefs that you received from when you were a kid. Think about the first time that you heard the word or the thing that you're describing and why you rejected it in the first place. Who did you pick it up from, or who shamed you into believing that you were that way? Or who did you watch getting shamed for acting like that? In my last video where we talked about 23 life lessons, I talked a little bit about when you're mad at somebody, or if you're jealous of somebody, or you're judging somebody, it's more of a reflection on you, and that is what these questions play on. The jealousy and the comparison. What is the root of those things that you have a problem with within yourself that is causing you to outward project your jealousy and your comparison onto these people? The fourth question is, what do you need to forgive someone for? Holding grudges is also more about you than it is about that person. And I'm not saying that you need to forget what you did, forgive and forget or whatever. You can always remember what they did, but forgiving them is the first step to moving on. This I can tell you, I know I say that I'm your twin sister, but this I can tell you for a fact. Holding resentment, holding a grudge, it holds way more of a place in your mind than just forgiving somebody and moving on. Like I said, not forgetting, but just moving on. The fifth question is, what do you think your best and your worst quality is? And I know this is like a job interview question, but genuinely, what do you think your best and your worst quality is? And why is it good and why is it bad? The sixth question is, what is something that you need to forgive yourself for? With this one, I actually did a meditation process that really helped me that I want to introduce to you guys. The first thing you need to do is just close your eyes and imagine yourself meeting yourself. So I want you to see just an empty chair in front of you. And then with this empty chair, I want you to think of your past selves. I want you to go all the way to your childhood self and have that little girl or little boy sit right in front of you in that empty chair. Take something from that part of your life, or take all the things from that part of your life that you want to forgive that little kid for, and forgive them. Give them a hug. Tell them exactly what they needed to hear. Tell them what they didn't get to hear when they were a kid, and forgive them. Do this with every single stage in your life that you need to do it for, whether it's your child self, whether it's your teenage self, your young adult self. Do it with every single age that you need to do it for, but forgive yourself. The eighth question I also want you to write down in detail, and it is, what was I like as a child? What was childhood me like? What helps with this one is either pull up a picture or think of a picture in your mind that you have from when you were a kid and write down exactly what you were like as a child. And along with that, I want you to write down exactly what you needed as a child that you maybe didn't get, that you maybe wanted. And I'm not talking like, oh, I wanted an iPad. No, I'm talking about like, I needed love. I don't know why I said it like that, but that's what I mean. Like something like actually deep. Like, what is something that you needed that you were not provided with that you feel like is impacting you now? The ninth shadow work prompt that I'm now saying is a prompt because I'm realizing that not all of these are questions. If you have the best parents in the world or the worst parents in the world, I want you to write a letter to them. If they hurt you in the past, if they ignored you, whatever it may be, write that all down in the letter. Now you can write this letter with the intent in mind that you're not going to send it, or you can write it with the intent that you are going to send it. Now, if you are going to send it, don't be mean. And I know it can be very hard to not do that, especially if you have parents that, you know, have done some questionable things in the past. But if you're writing the letter with the intent of sending it, I do think it's helpful to write a letter with the intent of not sending it first and then revising it into something that you would actually want to send. Because if you just jumble out a bunch of words that are really angry, that are like, you did this not to me and da 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 blah, it's not going to come of anything, especially if your parents are not on the well-receiving end of that. If you do write it with the intent of sending it, you want to make sure that you have the intention of actually bettering the situation instead of making it even worse. If you have a therapist, you can even go to your therapist about this. I know I did when I wrote a letter to my parents. My therapist actually read my letter over. We changed some stuff and all that, and it turned out to be the best thing that I could have done for my parents and I's relationship. So I'm so glad that I did it. The 10th question / prompt is, what is something that I need to accept about myself or about my life? Now, this is something that I feel like I have to work on a lot all the time, because I always have the mindset of, this is what my life should look like. This is what I should be doing right now. And if it's not, you know, I get disappointed. I get however emotion I may feel at that time. But sometimes we need to just accept the fact that our life is the way that it is. Now, I'm not saying that you can't change it. I'm not saying that you can't do something about it if you don't like what it is right now. But I'm saying that you need to accept where you're at right now before you can even start to move on. The 11th and the final shadow work question is, if you could meet yourself 10 years from now, what would you want that version of you to look like? And I pretty much ask this in every single video that I do, but it's so very important for you to remind yourself every single time what the goal is. So if you could meet yourself 10 years from now, what would that version of you look like? What would that person be doing every single day? What would their schedule look like? Their friends, their relationships, everything. And then from there, I want you to question yourself, why do you think you're afraid of becoming that person? Or what am I most afraid about others finding out about that person? And yes, some of the answers of course are going to be, oh, like I don't have enough money right now, or I'm working this job so I can suffice to support my small business, or whatever it may be. I'm talking about the mental state that you need to get into to get yourself to that position. For example, if your goal is content creation, which my examples are always about content creation because I feel like it's just the easiest thing for me to grab at, but let's say you want to be a content creator. Yes, you're making all the videos right now, and that's great. In 10 years from now, you want to be the best influencer there is, the best content creator there is. So you're making videos now. But the highest version of yourself is actually posting on Instagram, is actually posting on YouTube consistently, all of that. You can't become that highest version of yourself that is posting on all those platforms if you're scared of what people are going to think of you. Which is why we're asking ourselves all these questions, to try and get to the root of what the cause is of why we're not able to push ourselves to the highest self. I'm definitely going to be doing a part 2 on this because there are so many things that you can ask yourself. There are so many routes that you can take to heal the trauma that you need in order to get to your highest self, and I'm doing it right here too. So we're definitely going to come back and do a little check-in on these, and we're going to do more questions and all that in the future. But I just want to thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked this podcast, make sure you come back next Sunday because I'll be back with another episode. If you want to catch me on a more daily basis with a little bit more of a look into my life, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok because that's where I post the most daily. My TikTok is tiffany.garuba and my Instagram is tiffanygaruba with no dot in the middle. And then with my YouTube, I always have my weekly Wednesday vlogs and my sit down Sundays, so make sure to stay tuned for those. I'll have a vlog this Wednesday, which is going to be my Beyonce vlog, and next Sunday we're going to have another podcast out, which I don't know what we're going to be talking about yet, but I'm sure it's going to be something great. I hope you guys have such an amazing week. Remember to be kind to yourself and to others. Give someone a compliment that you don't know. It'll make their whole day, I promise you. I love you guys so much, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye. Mwah. Here she comes. Jump, jump, jump. Look what a good girl. Look what a good girl. Okay, time to get started now that we're all seated and ready to go.